Okay, well, thank you very much. It's really great to be here, and I'm going to just give a little bit more information about me. So my name is Jack Dayan, and I know when I say that, I know what you're thinking, and the answer is yes. My middle initial is N, so I am Jack and Dayan. But there's no relation to John Cougar, although I did try to get that music for when I came up on stage. For fun. So yeah, today's going to be a fun morning. I've divided my talk into three parts. The first is really focused on why brand matters, and surprisingly, it's not very obvious. We're going to talk a little bit about a world of chaos that our brands are operating in part two, and then we're going to talk about how to throw a full punch and overcome that chaos. So we're going to dive into it, but before I do that, I wanted to play a little bit of a game. I'm going to show you guys an ad, and without saying anything, I want you to just raise your hand if you can identify what brand this ad is for. You know, who is the brand behind the ad? So if you know, just raise your hand, but don't say anything. Okay, on your marks, get set, go. Wow, let's see, put your hands up if you know which brand this is for. Nearly everybody. Okay, we got nearly everybody. Wow, I've never been in a room with so many people who got it wrong before. Actually, it's not TELUS. Yeah, back in the day before TELUS, my old agency that I used to work at, Taxi, created the Future is Friendly and the Critters platform. And it was the biggest merger in telco history back then in the year 2000 when TELUS actually acquired ClearNet. And Darren Entwistle, the CEO, famously said, "I just paid $1 billion for a duck," because he saw the value in the brand. He saw the power of the brand. In fact, this is one of Canada's most recognizable brands. 97% of people, you didn't actually get it wrong, can recognize the TELUS brand without seeing any logos, any ads. I mean, it's the pinnacle of recognition. So your brand is your most valuable asset. It contributes to value creation. It helps you define your culture, right? It attracts talent. It helps influence your product, your service, and your CX decisions. Your brand is a reflection of who your customers are and want to be. It's filled with associations that are created. Some of them are intentional, some are unintentional. But if you don't invest in your brand first, your CX investment really will never matter. And I think that's really important to remember. And I have an example of that. Like, the best CX can't save a crappy brand, and it can't inspire disengaged employees. Spirit Airlines, they haven't made $1 since 2019. They're $1 billion in debt. They're notoriously awful. They cancel flights constantly. They have the worst customer service. People just don't care who work there. So even here, if you were to inject the most beautiful CX moments, it's not going to make a difference for a brand like that. They just have never invested in their brand. In fact, they're number 6 on the worst, having the worst brand reputation according to the Axios Harris poll of all time. Like, they're awful. So as Henry Ford once said, a business that makes nothing but money is a poor business, right? You have to have more than just great operations and sound financials. You need more to be a great brand. So how do you do it? This world that we're living in is completely chaotic, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, right? We're seeing huge shifts in the things that are important to people and what we value, right? Coming out of the pandemic, everything's changed. Work, life, we've reprioritized everything that matters as customers, more than that as people. And actually, predictions have become near impossible. As a strategist, we used to look ahead 2 years. We'd say, oh, look, there's some trends forming. They kind of happen like continental drift, slow moving. You could see them happening for miles. But nowadays, trends are impossible to predict. In fact, I just had breakfast with my futurist friend in Toronto last week, and he said to me, Jack, you can't predict the future. You can simply speculate on scenarios. And this really bummed me out because I was hoping to get the lotto numbers from him, and it didn't work out. So let's talk about this world of chaos now in part 2. This is a tough time to be in marketing. We're up against some pretty significant challenges, and I'm going to review those challenges. There have been seismic changes in the way and shifts in the way we think about life, perceptions, and our behaviors. And in case you haven't noticed, shift number 1, the world is angry. 84% of us believe that the world is angrier than ever before. Nearly half of us say that we ourselves are angrier. Now, this poses a big challenge for brands, right? Because one wrong move, one misplaced ad, one misunderstood tweet, one product or service failure can actually become a pretty significant PR nightmare very quickly for brands. So I was looking into this more and more, and I had to share this quote from Outbursts of Rage, an article in The Guardian, where this lady's saying, last week a stranger threatened to beat me and my husband up at a store. Why would a 30-year-old muscular man want to beat up a pair of grandparents? But apparently, this happens all the time. I mean, we're seeing it in the news, right? Fights on airplanes, in grocery store lineups, in parking lots. It's a really different time that we're living in this angry period. Part of the problem is that the middle is eroding. Like, there used to be a mass group of the indifferent in the middle. Sorry, that was the middle. And on the left, you had sort of fringe groups, and on the right, you had fringe groups. That middle is eroding, and we're not seeing eye to eye on anything anymore. Right? We can't agree on politics or pineapple on pizza. It doesn't matter what the conversation is. It gets heated pretty quickly. So the challenge is that this increase in societal anger is increasing brand anger. I'm going to repeat this twice because I find it shocking. The number of people who are seeking brand rage since 2020 has tripled. Brand rage, it's tripled. Like, I don't understand it, but there are people out there not looking to get even, but actually to get the brands, to go after them, to suffocate them. 63% of us experience a problem with the company. We feel a sense of rage. It's no longer frustration or I'm upset. There's a sense of rage. This is the majority of us. We're actually sensing and experiencing a sense of rage. The challenge is when you're angry, you need an outlet and you need a target. Well, your brand is now the target and the outlet is social media, right? It's opened the doors for complaining and for sharing that sense of rage. There's some interesting news here, though, that if somebody posts something negative about your brand and you leave it, you just let it simmer and you forget about it and you ignore it. If it gets 6,000 or more likes, then that is it. It's something that you cannot control, and it is officially a PR nightmare. However, if you respond within 7 likes to a negative post, you can contain it and nip that problem in the bud. So this is really important. The speed of response in a day like today, in an era of anger, is so important that we're fast at responding. We can't let things simmer. We can't leave them. And this is also why CX is so critical, because when we can create positive experiences and great brand experiences, we can. That's the kryptonite to hate and rage, right? And the more we can do that, the better off we're going to be. And those who enjoy excellent positive experiences with the brand are spending 140% more than those who aren't. It's good, smart money to invest in great brand experiences. The second shift is the age of anxiety. And this has been happening for a while now, but we saw during the pandemic extreme heights of mental health issues, right? What's shocking to me is we're still experiencing those same highs. You know, pandemic feels like it's behind us, but mental health issues aren't. We're still suffering from some challenges. How bad is it? Half of us in this room are going to experience mental health issues by the age of 40. I mean, it's rampant. So what we're seeing is more and more brands are actually injecting empathy into their brand narrative. It's a part of their core story. It's not just, you know, a little CSR initiative. It's actually becoming a part of the brand story. An example of that is Bell, right? They've been doing this for many years now to create that association with mental health around Let's Talk. We see it with Dove and Real Beauty and the cost of Real Beauty. Burger King launched the Unhappy Meal, right? There's lots of brands that are getting involved to create this narrative. We also did, I just want to bring this and share this, mental health affects 1 out of 4 Canadians. In the creative industry, it's 3 out of 4 Canadians are suffering from mental health issues. It's a real challenge being in the creative industry. So we actually partnered with a company called Worth to create the hotline hat, where we put the mental health hotline number on the hat, so it's front and center. And for every hat sold, it's equivalent to 1 free hour of counseling for people in need. So I've got 3 more hours to give away today for the best 3 questions today, or we'll call it the first 3 questions. So I love this quote. It seems that appealing to our morals and social identities is now the way forward in corporate marketing. Sex sells, and now morals do too. And there's a great study that was done in Belgium on empathy. Brands that are empathetic experience 2 times 7 more time. Sorry, people are almost 3 times more likely to consider you, 3 times more likely to purchase you, and 3.5 times more likely to be loyal to you and to show you brand love. Like, this is a lot of good stuff. And if that's not good enough for you, you're 3 times more likely to boost your NPS scores when you're an empathetic brand. So this makes a lot of sense that it's becoming a much larger part of brand narrative. The third shift is the fear of our existence. And this is an interesting one. I think we're all bombarded by negative news, pretty existentially negative news about our climate, from incredible global rising temperatures, the decline of our oceans, you name it, it's pretty bad. And it's actually caused a significant shift in this not being our problem, right? When you hear that, oh, this is 500 years away, we're not worried about our generation, but that's shifted now. We're actually extremely worried about our generation. We're extremely worried about our children's generation. And what we're seeing is that, and this is a global study by Edelman, that 93% of us, almost everybody, universally, believe that climate change poses a serious and imminent threat to our future. So it's pretty dire, and what we're seeing is that actually we're changing our lifestyle to adapt to a more sustainable way of living. We want to. 78% of us express the importance of embracing a sustainable lifestyle. And 85% of consumers, when it relates to brands, decide against buying products and services because of climate change inaction. So you can't fly under the radar anymore, right? You're gonna lose customers if you fly under the radar. You need to make climate change a part of your story. There's one brand that has done that, and I wanted to share that. Have you heard of Santander? It's Spain's national bank. And they did some research that showed that 75% of their customers say that climate change is important to them. And another 65% said that they want tools to help them combat climate change. So what they did is they actually introduced, and they were the first bank in Europe to do this, they partnered with MasterCard to introduce an app that tracked their carbon footprint based on their purchases, and then allowed their customers to purchase carbon credits to offset their carbon footprint. So a nice way to actually provide that tool to people. But they also collect all of the ATM cards, all the Visa cards, and they recycle them into benches and other urban furniture across the major cities. So they're actually putting they're making a voice and a story around what they're doing when it comes to climate change. And what I love about this too is it allows them to shift their narrative, right? They're a bank. Interest rates, credit cards, checking accounts, these are all things that every other bank talks about. But now they can have focus in an area that's different, that gives them an opportunity to create an emotional connection in a way that they probably couldn't before. Another brand that's doing a great job of that is GM. They basically said, forget about torque and RPMs and gas mileage. We want to be the brand that represents the electric future. They've made some big promises here to eliminate tailpipe emissions by 2035 and become carbon neutral by 2040. I'm going to share an ad with you that I love that I think you'll enjoy around this.
General Motors is going electric, and Netflix is joining in by including more EVs in their movies and shows. It's the least they can do.
So if you're gonna get swarmed by an army of the dead, why not get swarmed in an EV?
No! I said no biting!
Or if you're being voluntarily kidnapped, why not be kidnapped in an EV? What's that scent? Is it pine? Now, should they add EVs everywhere?
They shalln't. They shan't. Is it shallant or shan't?
It's neither.
What about here, Erica?
You're ruining the show, you idiot.
What do you mean? It's me, Dusty.
You're not.
Yeah, you're right. This is ridiculous.
Tammy, wait!
Later, loser.
But anywhere else it makes sense.
There goes another runner.
Brad was so much better for you. You should have gone with Brad.
Yeah, Brad.
Are you serious?
Why not make more of those cars electric? It's the least they can do.
Gordon, you kill me. I mean, you literally did kill me. You know what? I'm glad you bit me too.
So embracing climate change for your brand story it's happening, and it's interesting, and it's more than just an added value. Right? Brands that embrace climate change are differentiating, they're responsible, and they're profitable, according to a McKinsey study. So in an age where governments can't move quick enough, brands that move at the speed of climate change are winning. Okay, the next shift, there's two more. We want everything faster. I mean, a culture of speed. We're addicted to speed. And you think about it from every category, from banking to the retail checkout, ordering Uber Eats, getting on or off a plane. We want everything to be as fast as possible. We're addicted to that speed. There was a book written by a guy named James Glake called FSTR, Faster. And he talks about this phenomenon in culture called hurry sickness. And I think we've all seen people who walk up to elevators and they keep pushing the button over and over again. And it's timed, after the first push, but it happens at street corners where it's like rapid fire on these buttons. I'm actually guilty of it myself, where I walk up to a microwave oven and I push instead of pushing 6-0 for 60 seconds, I push 5-5 because it's faster. And I'm probably undercooking everything I'm eating, but whatever. The speed of culture and the speed of the way we interact with brands has totally changed. In fact, technology has completely removed opportunities for real brand engagement. Shopping in store takes approximately 13 seconds and online only about 9. So we're making decisions incredibly fast when it comes to brand choice. And most of us are what Daniel Kahneman calls fast thinkers. We just don't have the mental capability to spend time with brands and consume everything they want us to know. This is one of my favorite cartoons. I've used it before. This is a great look into the mind of the consumer. You've got two marketers in a room, and they're staring into the mind of this customer, and they're like looking, and they're seeing that they're thinking about their mom and dad, their career, their travel, their dog, all this other stuff that matters in life. And one says, I don't see our brand of pickle relish anywhere. Inconceivable. This is a brand loyalist. I think we need to reset our expectation on the relationship we have with our customers, right? We're not going to get around their dinner table conversations. They've got real life things that they're talking about. And because we don't have a lot of opportunities to connect now because of technology, we need to make sure that every moment we have counts. I'll give you an example. Beer is one of those very fast purchases, right? And in this category, there's some very good advertising in this category, but there's a lot of very rational, functional things that are being thrown at us around organic beer or a brewer who's got, creating their own hops. There's a lot of really kind of fast stuff that's coming at us. But you walk into a liquor store, you see 50 different brands, you pick out your beer and you go. It's a very quick purchase. But the act of enjoying the beer could be enduring, it could be lasting, it could be very emotional. So the question is, shouldn't we focus on the when, where, and how people enjoy our products and services rather than on those functional benefits? Shouldn't we be spending more time on celebrating those moments of enjoyment? So instead of only prioritizing pain points when we think about customer service and experiences and brand experiences, we should actually prioritize those moments of enjoyment. Let's think about those and celebrate those and make them linger, because those are those moments that really count. The next shift, your last one, is your brand is under constant scrutiny. And I want to talk about this because I'm going to throw some acronyms at you now that are really important. NIMBY, not in my backyard. CAVE, citizens against virtually everything. And BANANA, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. These used to be small pockets of resistance, and they're forced to be reckoned with. I've seen them actually stunt brand growth, create barriers and challenge to brand decision and acquisitions. These are really big challenges that are no longer just pockets of resistance. You have to pay attention to these groups. The challenge is that it's not just these groups that you have to be aware of, because a single voice can actually wreak incredible havoc for your brand. And that's why paying attention and responding to social negativity is really important. You can't just be idle and forget about it. I'm going to bring back a story. Does anyone remember somebody named Dave Carroll? Yeah. Dave Carroll was a musician, and in 2009, he was flying United Airlines, and somebody looked out the window and noticed that the people on the tarmac were just throwing guitars. They're playing pass with the guitars, and obviously his broke. He had a $3,500 Taylor guitar, nice guitar, and he complained. He went up to 3 different people at United Airlines and said, you guys did this, and nobody took responsibility, nobody took liability. So what did Dave do? Being in a band, he wrote a song, and he posted it on socials and made a music video. Within the first day, he had 150,000 views. Within the first few months, he had over 10 million views. And he was on a circuit on every single most important media talk show from CNN. He was everywhere. And what happened, they estimate that this caused a 10% decline in the United stock, which was $180 million. So when they could have replaced a $3,000 guitar, they ended up throwing away $180 million. Now, I did hear actually Dave Carroll played here in Saskatoon at one of the events. And I'm going to play you a bit of his song.
I flew United Airlines plane departed Halifax, connecting in Chicago's O'Hare. While on the ground, a passenger said from the seat behind me, "My God, they're throwing guitars out there." The band and I exchanged a look, best described as terror, at the action on the tarmac, and knowing whose projectiles these would be. So before I left Chicago, I alerted 3 employees who showed complete indifference towards me. United, united, you broke my Taylor guitar. United, united, some big help you are. You broke it, you should fix it. You're liable, just admit it. I should have flown with someone else or gone by car. 'Cause United breaks guitars.
It's actually a very catchy tune. There's several other examples. There's a pair of brothers called the Einstein brothers who challenged Apple when Apple's batteries, they actually forced Apple to change their entire policy around their batteries back in the day. The power of a single voice is real, and again, you just have to pay attention to it. A strong brand, though, does provide a refuge to the havoc seekers. So the stronger your brand is, the more forgiveness you'll get. And mistakes happen, so it's important to, again, invest in your brand first. Okay, part 3, overcoming the chaos. The first thing that you have to do to overcome the chaos is to take a stance. Your brand needs to stand for something. You have to take a stance. We talk a lot about purpose. Back in 2006, Simon Sinek dropped the golden circle on the marketing world, and it was like an explosion. Everyone used that as their brand building model, left, right, and center, and it worked. Purpose was something that was really important. It's still important, but more than purpose, people want to know what you stand for today. Another Edelman global study says that 67% of us are belief-driven buyers. We buy brands, we choose brands based on an alignment with our personal beliefs. So that's key. They want to know what you stand for. And the best brands do take a stance. I have some examples of famous brand stances. Nike took a stance with Kaepernick. Again, I'm going to play that video. This is one of my favorite commercials.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful commercial, but it was even more powerful to take that move and pick a side, and that's what Nike did. And it was really moving for them, not only to create that connection with a huge base, but it gave them a $6 billion boost to their bottom line. So it was good for them in a lot of different ways. Another brand that we're all familiar with that took a stance on climate change is Patagonia, but they've really done that. They're giving all of their profits back to the environment. They are a political brand. This is a political stance that they've taken, but it's one that is also, again, feeding right into that belief-driven mindset, right into that buyer and their belief. Another spot for you. Yeah, I think you can't argue with that brand. They've proven that taking a stance doesn't affect the bottom line, it helps the bottom line, but it also creates a massive, again, engaging base. So taking a stance, though, doesn't have to be political, and I think that's a really important point. You just need to have a strong point of view in your category, on your culture, and the way you do business. It's really important that you define what that stance is. And I want to give you an example of that. I used to work on the Four Seasons hotel business. And they took a stance on the customer, on the guest. They believe that you have to do anything for that guest. And they actually trained the back of house in the same way that they trained the front of house. So the dishwasher had the same guest-centric training as somebody who's at the front desk. And I'll tell you why that's important. There's a famous story when a couple's in the elevator at a Four Seasons, and somebody walks in who's just been obviously washing windows. And the couple turns to this guy, and the gentleman says, "So what do you do here?" And he turns with a beaming smile and he says, "I make this place shine." It's on brand. That's what Four Seasons is all about. That's what the experience is about. Have a point of view in your category that's going to differentiate you. Every person, every part of the house, every day for your own organization, everybody's got to follow it. Another brand that, again, they don't have a political point of view, but REI believes that everybody should go out and enjoy the world, natural world, get out and play. And they back that up by closing on Friday, on Black Friday, the biggest sales day, and they let their employees go out and play as much as their customers. So again, they have a strong point of view about playing outside and enjoying nature. That's their stance. So your brand stance does become your North Star. It should impact everything. It should impact business decision. It should impact culture decisions, how you acquire new companies, what companies you acquire, HR benefits, how you evaluate your team's success. When it's working at its best, your brand stance should impact your entire organization, including your CX. 2, follow through. You've got to be committed when it comes to taking that stance. And I want to talk about this because it's so important. There's a stat that's really ugly out there that I think every marketer in the room should hear, and that is that 89% of brands go unnoticed. 89%. And of the 11% that are remembered, only 4% are remembered positively. This is what we're all working towards with our brands, getting into that 4%. It's hard, it's not easy. Nobody has time. We've talked about a lot of that chaos that we're up against. But the biggest challenge, no matter what category, no matter what product, no matter what brand, is ubiquity. And we see this time and time again. How can you fend off ubiquity when everyone's saying the same things? All your competitors are saying similar things, selling similar things, making similar promises. This is just a snapshot of the mid-scale hotel category. And you look at, I thought the amenity war ended many years ago, but it's still on. This whole category is focusing on thread counts, free Wi-Fi, free parking, free breakfast, and they're all saying that. So what's the difference in staying at one competitor versus the other? No one's giving you a reason to choose them in a category that's full of emotional connection, travel, memories, passions. Today's challenge isn't choice, it's choosing. We have too many choices. The challenge is finding a brand that you can choose, and the best brands make it easy to choose them. So I like to say it's not about getting to the heart of the matter, but getting into hearts that matters. We need to find emotional connections. We need to overcome the functional deficits that we all have. This is an example that we've just done. We launched a campaign for Sandman hotels, and instead of talking about Wi-Fi and parking, which was the original brief that we had, we're focused in on making memories. That's where we're taking that brand. Now, interestingly, ubiquity doesn't just attack what we say. It actually also is prevalent in the way we look, the way we appear. We worked with a national restaurant chain, and we looked at their competitors, their top 2 competitors. We eliminated all the logos, we eliminated all the branding, and we put together an example of what everyone looks like on the websites, in their advertising, the way they shoot their food, the lighting, the way they showcase people. And guess what? When we asked the client in the room which one was their brand, not everyone got it right. So it's really important that we're actually looking not only in what we say, but how we appear, our identities, to make sure that we're injecting differentiation into the entire process. I think there's an honest look that we all need to have at our brand. How do we appear against the competition? And a brand stance can help you find your way forward to that level of differentiation you're looking for. So I hate to say it, but USPs, unique selling propositions, they have an expiry date. While you may have something that you're leading now, someone will catch up or maybe even do it better. In this room, you aren't the fastest, you aren't the biggest, you aren't the cheapest. You're not the first, you're not the most sustainable, and you probably don't have the best service. Why? Because everyone else is saying those same things. They're making those same claims. I wanted to give this example. When I worked on Jack Daniel's, one of our first assignments, the head of marketing came up to me and gave me what he called their truth tree. And it was a page of a tree with maybe 30 branches, and each branch had a word on it and said, these are the truths about Jack Daniel's. This is what we need to put in every ad we make. So I looked at him and I said, well, which one are we communicating? And he said, all of them. And so we had a big talk, and we did what we called the true and meaningful survey. Because just because something's true about your brand doesn't mean that it matters. It doesn't mean that it's meaningful. So we actually went out and we identified the 3 things that actually were meaningful of all those truths on that tree. We chopped the branches and we led with confidence, genuine, and American. Those were the 3 things that actually mattered in the research. And it allowed us to do some award-winning work when we got to that point where let's be bold, let's be American, let's be confident, let's be genuine, let's lean into that world. And they're a wonderful brand that has incredible history and heritage, but that's not what matters. It's this stuff. Third thing is to be insightful. This is one that, as a strategist, is pretty close to my heart. I think one of the challenges I'm finding with insight is that big data has sort of come at the cost of real insight. We're given stacks of data, and that's very helpful, but that's not insightful. And we're meant to then write creative briefs and do a lot with the stacks of data, when at the end of the day, insight doesn't live in the numbers. It's the interpretation of it, but there's a better place to find it than in the big data. There's a great quote from the industry: if you want to hunt lions, you go to the jungle, not the zoo. We've got to get back to the jungle more. We need to actually be talking to people, to be in their homes, to go and experience what it's like to sit around a table while someone's enjoying a meal, to ride in a car with someone who's thinking about buying a car. Like, just simple things like that can give us such observation and insight that you can never find in data. I worked with Dr. Bob Deutsch many years ago. He's a cultural anthropologist and one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And he said this, and it always stuck with me. He said, if you want to be a great marketer, forget about marketing and think about life. Because life is where insights happen. We call our customers, they're people, they're human beings. And if we could find a way to identify the intersection of what's true about our brands and what's meaningful to them, we're going to find insight there. So I do say that to get to insight, we have to understand motivation. Because at the end of the day, motivation is what drives action. And behavior science tells us that there are 8 human motivations. You need a car when your car breaks down. You buy everything when you fear the pandemic, fear. You want new clothes for your first date to be desirable. You need a new financial advisor when everyone else is getting ahead, the FOMO, right? The 8 motivations are what drive us to make purchases, to interact with brands. And there may be a case where all of these are important and relevant for an initiative. But what I love about this, and it's really been really fun for us at our agency, is we're focusing in on the 1 or 2 motivations that matter most, and we're looking at that for unlocking great creative opportunity. And I think this is really important because it allows us, again, to be focused on what drives action, which is really key. So it's time to get back to the jungle. And my last one is to measure what matters. We talked about measurement yesterday. Measurement is critical, but not every measure is equal. I had watched Moneyball again recently. I don't know if everyone's seen that movie, but it's really inspiring, and I loved it because the way they think about baseball and how you win a game was very different than the way everybody was thinking about it. And it made me think about our world in advertising. Measuring awareness and consideration, which are probably the two top things we always measure, that's like a great catch or a fantastic play to first, but that's not necessarily going to win you the marketing game. Again, going back to motivation is what's going to win you. At the end of the day, doubling awareness doesn't necessarily double consideration, and doubling consideration isn't going to double your revenue. It's not going to double sales. Finding those sweet spots of those opportunities where we can create memorable, emotional connections with people through those motivations, there's an opportunity to actually really grow the business. So we need to find a way to measure those things. And I wanted to bring back TELUS again for that because they did this really well. As an organization, they knew that they were challenged to compete on price, to compete on technology, and to compete on products and service plans. But what they wanted to do was have an ambitious goal of being the most recommended brand. So L2R, likelihood to recommend, became the only metric that drove this organization. And they did a ton of research. It was art, it was science, that showed all the other brand pillars, the research pillars that ladder up into likelihood to recommend. But because they had only one single focus, it changed the organization, and everybody across the country, different geographies, different offices, were all rallying around this same thing. In fact, their performance was based on how well they were contributing to likelihood to recommend. And it really shifted the entire organization. Call center employees were not evaluated anymore on time spent on a call to get to the next one and the next one and the next one. It was all about customer satisfaction because that's what leads to recommendations. So I have a question for this audience, and you don't have to answer it, but you can think about it. How many people in your organization know exactly what your company goals are, what you stand for? I want you to think about that. I just did a global project, 100 interviews with a company from their key executives, their board members, all the way down to people planting trees. It's a forestry company. And not one of them can answer this question. They had amalgamated, they had acquired so many different brands that they had so many isms within the company that not one could really answer this question. And I wonder how many people in your organizations could really answer this, because it's critical. When employees understand what the company goals are, they're 5 times more likely to be enthusiastic to do their best work, and they're 20 times more likely to be committed in the company. Just to communicate and understand those goals. Again, going back to why that brand stance matters. So that's it. In summary, there's 4 things that we need to do to combat the chaos in this world. One is you've got to take a stance. Your brand needs to define what it stands for and celebrate that. You have to follow through. You can't do this with a half punch. It has to be a full punch. You need to be committed. And you need to be insightful, real insight. Find those insights, find those opportunities through motivation, through meaningful moments of connection, and then measure what matters. This is a tough one. It takes a lot of work to do that. And I'll leave you with one last thought. I think it's really important that you never take risks with your strategy. You do the right amount of work to get your strategy right. But when you do, you have to take risks with your creative. You have to have a creative ability to be risk takers if you're going to make an impact. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in that 89%. Thank you very much.
I guess my question is, how do you detach personal ego from a brand, especially as you're trying to build it up? Being in architecture, a lot of our brand is literally the name of the 3 old white guys in the room.
Yeah.
And as our industry is changing, we're trying to progress past that, but there is still that individual ego that's holding on to, well, this is me, this is my brand, and brands have to be more than that. So how do we help detach the ego from the brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's 2 ways that I think can help with that. One is to listen, to bring those people in as you're building a brand. You want to bring as many people in that are key decision makers or influencers into that process. And having them involved and make it feel like they're helping to guide where the brand is going gives them a new sense of ownership of where the new brand is headed. That's one. But then also do research, bring in the public opinion. And this is really important. That's why I say go back to the jungle. When you go out and talk to people and customers, no one can refute that. People might even say with some of the research that you do, wow, you know, consideration doesn't really matter, or it's up because of this or that, but no one can refute a great quote. So I think bringing in and backing up what you're saying and where you're headed with research is the way forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question is, how do you make sure that when you're empathizing with, for example, the public on, you know, either taking a political stance or whatever social issue, or like you said, it doesn't have to be political, but how do you ensure that that is seen as authentic by the wider audience rather than just pandering to, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually I took that slide out because I knew I was running along. But I was going to reinforce, you have to be authentically empathetic. Did I say that right? It's hard. But you need to be authentic, and you're 100% right. If you just inject empathy into your CX, for example, but you're not an empathetic brand, people will call bullshit. They'll pull the curtain back on you. So it's important that it becomes part of your brand and not just something you're doing for the sake of doing it to make more money, for example. So, you know, empathy could be injected into a brand, but I think you have to do it slowly and over time and make it real. Start internally first with your own culture so that you can have proof points. You're an empathetic brand, and then start to express it outwardly.
This is actually kind of a build on that question. How do you find balance within your brand campaign, knowing what consumers are looking for, empathy being relatable, when you're trying to also enact some structural change to your operations? Like Nike is a great example. They do a really good job with their branding, but they've also been under scrutiny for living wages in their supply chain and things like that. And when we look at consumers being concerned about sustainability and ethics, there's a big gap there. So how do you, if you're part of an organization like Nike and you're part of the marketing team and you're working on the branding, how do you find that balance when operationally you know there are maybe some missteps that aren't as truthful in terms of what you're relaying to the consumers and the public?
Yeah. That's another great question, and it's one that I might not have the perfect answer for. I think that in a case of Nike, being loud about the positive things that you want to tell your, positive stories helps quell a little bit of the challenges that appear, in more pockets of resistance. That said, those pockets are strong. You can't ignore them. You have to deal with them. And I think Nike has shifted a lot of that conversation and has implemented a lot of change. But they're still, for example, one of the big contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. The top 100 companies produce 71% of greenhouse gases, all greenhouse gases. Nike's one of those companies. So I think there's a sense of being loud to help quiet the challenge, but then also you have to create action. You have to be change-oriented. And I think it goes back to being authentic. If you're not doing the right things, then don't say that you're doing the right things. You have to do them first. I think change is a journey. That's the other thing I would say. That, if you're making small changes and you still have a ways to go, you can still start to tell that story. You don't have to wait until all the changes happened. Start telling that story, but you can tell a story of being on a journey as well. You don't have to say that we've changed overnight, but we're changing. We've listened. We've heard you. We're going to make changes to our organization.